The sky over the galactic consensus's capital world was a tapestry of gentle colors, soft pinks and calming blues, maintained by atmospheric projectors. It was a world without sharp edges, without sudden storms, without predators. Fleetlight, a commander of the crystalline Shuin, stood on the observation deck of the flagship Luminous Promise. His form, made of interlocking facets, dimmed with a sorrow that was both personal and universal. On the vast holographic display before him, the serene tapestry of space was being unraveled by a blight. It was the Vorax, not a civilization, but a hunger given shape. Their ships were not built. They were grown, ugly lumps of chitin and biometal that moved in a silent, terrifying swarm. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They consumed. They landed on worlds, and within a standard cycle, every living thing was processed into raw biomass to feed their endless expansion. The consensus's weapons, elegant beams of focused light and precise gravity disruptors, simply washed over the swarm's organic hulls. Their strategies, based on logic and honor, were useless against a force that understood only consumption. We have analyzed every frequency, every potential weakness, chimed a delicate, avian-like illusion advisor, her feathers trembling. Their biology absorbs our energy weapons. Their hive mind is immune to our psychic appeals. They are an impossibility. Fleetlight's core felt cold. There must be something. Re-examine the archives. The oldest archives. Look for anything classified as a death world. Any species that evolved in brutality. The request was a measure of their desperation. To the consensus, death worlds were cosmic mistakes, hellish planets of extreme gravity, violent weather, and rampant predation. Most such worlds never developed sentient life. Those that did usually destroyed themselves in primitive wars. They were not studied, but pitied and avoided. Deep within the databanks, a junior analyst, a meek being with too many eyes, found a fragment. A corrupted file, millennia old, from a long-range passive observatory probe. Its designation, Sol 3, classification, Death World, Class 12, Extreme. The attached data was fragmented, terrifying. Atmospheric composition, unstable and toxic. Surface gravity, 1.0 G standard, but geological and meteorological activity, catastrophic. Predatory life forms documented in over 80% of the biosphere. A brief, chaotic history of the dominant species, Homo sapiens. The file's final entry, scrawled in the old script, read, "Observe only, no contact. Potential for extreme recursive violence. Recommend quarantine." The image of the species was blurry, but it showed bipedal, sturdy-looking creatures. They seemed so ordinary, so soft. The analyst forwarded the file to Fleetlight with a note, "Only known Death World species in this sector. File is ancient, likely extinct due to planetary instability or self-annihilation. Irrelevant." But Fleetlight saw the words recursive violence. He had nothing else. In a final, hopeless act, he ordered a powerful, repeating distress signal to be broadcast on all subspace bands towards the coordinates of that long-dead world. Sol 3. It was a message in a bottle, thrown into a cosmic ocean, aimed at a graveyard. He did not expect an answer. He was simply marking the place where hope ended. On Earth, in a facility built into the side of a dormant volcano in the Korean peninsula. The air was crisp and clean by human standards. The environment was controlled, but not gentle. The gravity was Earth normal, which was, in galactic terms, punishingly heavy. The atmosphere was rich in oxygen, a volatile, corrosive gas that fueled fierce fires. In a large simulation chamber, two figures moved with a quiet, focused intensity. Lee Jun, a man with a calm, unreadable face and eyes that missed nothing. was directing a holographic squad through a derelict starship scenario. The threats were alien, biologically hostile. "Watch the ceiling vent," he said, his voice low and even. "Spore emission in 3, 2, 1. A simulated creature dropped, and June's avatar dispatched it with a single, precise shot to a neural cluster. It was not about firepower. It was about efficiency. Observing the biological readouts on a separate panel was Kim Yuna. Her focus was absolute, her fingers flying over the interface, cataloging the simulated creature's weaknesses. "Its acid blood is a phosphate-based compound," she noted. "Our standard sealant should neutralize it. But the scream it emits before death, that's a sonic weapon. We need dampeners tuned to that frequency." This was the Aegis Project. While the world's nations bickered over borders and resources, a secret consortium had long ago realized a fundamental truth. Earth was a monster. Humanity was the product of that monster. To survive their own world, humans had to be tougher, smarter, and more adaptable than any other creature. The Aegis Project took that a step further. They found the best, the most resilient soldiers, the most brilliant survivalists, the most stable minds, and they optimized them. They trained them in environments that made this volcanic base seem like a paradise. The vacuum of space, the crushing pressure of a gas giant's atmosphere, the toxic soup of an alien jungle. They were humanity's hidden immune system. June and Yuna had been partners for 5 years. They rarely spoke of anything outside the mission. There was no need. They understood each other's rhythms, each other's silences. He was the shield, the tactician, reading the immediate threat. She was the scalpel, the exobiologist, understanding the deeper nature of the danger. A soft, urgent chime echoed in the chamber, different from any simulation alarm. It was the sound of real priority. The holograms winked out. On the main display, a chaotic screening signal resolved. It was a visual distress pattern, overlaid with complex mathematical language and a star map. It showed a location far, far from Earth. It showed a swarm of biosignatures overwhelming graceful. Geometric ships dot the door to the chamber slid open. An older man, Director Park, entered. His face was grim. "You saw it?" "We did," Yuna said, her analytical mind already working. "The signal structure is advanced, but the message is primitive. A cry for help. The attacking life forms. Their growth patterns are indicative of a ravenous hive. They consume without logic. The galactic consensus," Director Park said, gesturing to the geometric ships. "Our long-range telescopes have hinted at them. A peaceful, advanced alliance. And this," he pointed to the swarm, "is the Vorax. They're losing. Badly." June studied the tactical display. Their weapons are ineffective. Their ships are fragile. They are fighting a flood with poetry. "That's the assessment," Director Park agreed. "And they have just broadcast their final plea to every corner of this sector, including ours." Silence hung in the room. The implications were vast. Contact. First contact. But not a meeting of equals. A scream for a savior. "The Council has voted," Director Park continued. "Protocol Exodus is activated. We are not sending a fleet. We are not sending diplomats. We are sending a message. One ship, one team. We show them what a Deathworlder can do. We show them we are not victims of our world. We are its masters." June and Yuna exchanged a look. There was no fear, no excitement, only a shift in focus. The simulations were over. This was the reason for everything. "Who else is on the team?" June asked. "You will have Choi Min-soo for heavy weapons and engineering, and Park Suman for piloting and electronic warfare. The ship is the unyielding spirit. It is small, it is tough, and it is very, very quiet. You leave in 6 hours. As Director Park left, Yuna returned to the signal, isolating the Vorax biosignatures. "They're adapted to benign worlds," she murmured, almost to herself. "Their attack strategy is based on overwhelming delicate systems. They won't be prepared for us." June was already checking the specs of the unyielding spirit. "They asked for help from a death world," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "They just don't know what that means yet." Outside the volcano base, the Earth continued its relentless spin. Storms brewed over oceans. Volcanoes rumbled. Predators hunted in the dark. It was just another day on a Class 12 death world, and two of its most dangerous children were getting ready to go to work. The unyielding spirit slipped between the stars not with a flashy leap, but with a determined, silent slide. Its hull was a non-reflective black, absorbing light and sensor pings. Inside, the atmosphere was one of quiet readiness. Choi Min-soo, a broad-shouldered man who spoke little but smiled often, was running diagnostics on the ship's kinetic projectile launchers, a primitive technology by galactic standards, but one he swore by. Park Soo-min, her fingers a blur over the navigation console, was weaving them through a debris field with calm precision. "The consensus ships," she noted, "they break apart so cleanly, like glass." Lee Jun watched the main viewer. The battle at the edge of the Arilo system was not like any war he had studied. It was a slaughter, but a strangely beautiful one. The consensus vessels were like crystalline sculptures, firing beams of elegant light. The Vorax swarm ships were the opposite, lumpy, organic, and brutal. They simply crashed through the formations, ignoring the energy fire, and latched onto the consensus hulls with fleshy, grinding mouths. "It's not a war," Kim Yuna said from her science station. Her eyes were fixed on the biological scans. "It's a consumption event. The Vorax don't target engines or bridges. They target life sign clusters and bulk organic material. They're eating them." A priority channel flickered to life on their cones. It was the consensus flagship, the Luminous Promise. The signal was clean, the translation software working. "Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Light of the Galactic Consensus. You have entered an active annihilation zone. Your profile is not in our records. State your origin and intent." The voice was musical, but strained with a fear so deep it had become a kind of tired sorrow. June nodded to Soo-min. "Open a channel. Video and biodata packet, standard Aegis protocols." He took a breath, centering himself. This was first contact. On the screen, the image of Fleet Light resolved. The Shuan commander was a being of breathtaking, fragile beauty. His body seemed carved from living amber, catching the light of his bridge. His multifaceted eyes widened slightly at the sight of the humans. They looked almost familiar. Bipedal, 2 arms ahead. But their proportions were all wrong. Too dense. Their movements in the video feed were too crisp, lacking the graceful flow of consensus species. And their environment, the interior of the unyielding spirit, was stark, utilitarian, all hard edges and muted colors. "I am Lee Jun of Earth. We received your distress signal. We are here to assist." His words were translated into soft, harmonic tones. Fleet Light was silent for a long moment. The hope that had flickered in his core at the arrival of an unknown ship died. This was not a savior. This was a single, small, primitive craft. There were only 4 life signs aboard. It was a tragic, final joke. "Your assistance is noted, humans of Earth, but you do not understand. This is a Class 10 biohazard extinction event. Your vessel cannot survive contact. You must retreat. We will try to buy time for your escape." It was a gesture of final, pointless nobility. Yuna cut in, her voice calm and analytical. "Fleet Light, Your weapons are energy-based. Our scans show the Vorax carapace absorbs and dissipates over 94% of that energy. You are heating them up. You are not hurting them. You need kinetic impact, concentrated chemical explosives, or biological counteragents. The alien commander seemed to wilt. Kinetic weapons are forbidden by consensus accords. They are crude. They cause uncontrolled collateral damage. Biological warfare is unthinkable. June's expression did not change. Your forbidding of tools does not make the threat disappear. It only makes you helpless against it. We request permission to dock with the Luminous Promise. We need direct sensor data and a tactical briefing. Fleetlight defeated, agreed. What did it matter now? The docking procedure itself was a culture shock. The consensus docking bay was a vast, serene space filled with soft light and gentle floating drones. The unyielding Spirit, when it extended its landing claws, scratched the pristine floor with a screech that made several illusion technicians cover their auditory organs. When the hatch opened, the environmental exchange was immediate to the humans. The consensus ship air smelled sweet and faintly of flowers. It was thin, low in oxygen, and filled with complex pheromones. To the consensus species, the air that spilled from the human ship was a blast of terrifying potency. It was thick, rich with oxygen, heavy with trace metals, and the smell of stressed composites. Lubricants and the undeniable sharp scent of the humans themselves, a pheromone signature that read, to their senses, as hyper-alert, non-predatory, but dangerously capable. June and Yuna stepped out first. In their full black environment suits, helmets held under their arms. Minsu and Sumin remained on the ship, a silent promise of power. The gathering crowd of aliens' willowy illusions with large eyes. The crystalline Shuin, a few furry quadrupeds gasped and drew back. They weren't afraid of the humans as monsters. Not yet. They were afraid of them as contaminants. Their very biological presence was an aggressive act. Fleetlight approached, his facets dimming in the stronger light and thicker air. He was taller than June, but seemed insubstantial. You are breathing our air? He asked, astonished. It is within our tolerance range, Yuna said, her clinical tone masking the fact that she found it a little stifling. Your gravity is also slightly low for us. We will adapt. In the strategy room, the full scale of the disaster was laid bare. Holograms showed system after system falling dark, consumed. Fleetlight explained their tactics, their failures. June listened, then pointed to a Vorax swarm ship magnified on the screen. You see these rib-like structures? They are structural weaknesses. A focused impact that would cause a cascading collapse. Your beams are too diffuse. And how would you deliver such an impact? Asked a skeptical illusion tactician, her feathers puffed in distress. With a projectile, or a shaped charge. Placed directly, June said. That would require breaching their hull, sending beings inside. The atmosphere is corrosive. The pressure is extreme. The internal defenses are comparable to a Class 9 toxic environment on our planet, Yuna finished. We have training modules that simulate worse. She called up a simplified readout of human physiological data on the main viewer. The room fell into a stunned silence as numbers and descriptions scrolled. Bone density, 300% of consensus. Average muscle tensile strength, 450%. Of consensus average asterisk neuroreaction. Speed, 220% of consensus average asterisk tolerance spectrum. Toxic chemicals, high. Ionizing radiation, high. Atmospheric pressure variance, extreme. Gravitational variance, high. Psychological stress endurance opening parenthesis classified, closing parenthesis. Primary evolutionary drivers, predation. Extreme climate volatility, intraspecies competition. They are. They are made of stone and wire, whispered an illusion. No, Fleet Light said, his light pulsing slowly as he understood. They are from a world where everything is trying to kill them. And they won. He looked at June, not with fear now, but with a dawning, terrifying awe. You are not just soldiers. You are survivors from a death world. June met his gaze. We are what our world made us. And we are here because your world, all your worlds, are gentle. The Vorax are a disease that preys on the gentle. We are the cure. We need you to do one thing for us. Anything, Fleet-like breathed. Distract them, June said, a plan fully formed in his mind. Pull your fleet back. Make a big, bright, noble last stand over there. He pointed to a gas giant on the map. Draw every Vorax ship you can. While you do that, we will go to the source. His finger moved to the heart of the swarm, a massive pulsating biological signal. We will find the brain of the swarm, and we will cut it out. The consensus commanders stared. The plan was insane. It was a suicide mission. It was also the only plan that was not elegy. As they looked at the four humans so small, so solid, so utterly unafraid of the hell they were proposing to walk into, a fragile, impossible feeling took root. It was not quite hope. It was the shadow hope casts when something much darker steps into the light. The unyielding spirit undocked an hour later. As it faded from view, Fleet Light gave the orders. The consensus fleet, for the first time, began a tactical retreat, lighting up their engines in a brilliant, desperate glow, praying the monsters would follow the easy meal. And the small black ship from the death world turned silently and headed into the dark, thickest part of the swarm. The gas giant, a swirling marble of orange and white, filled the viewport of the luminous promise. It was a beautiful place to die. Fleetlight's orders had been executed with perfect, tragic precision. His remaining ships gleamed like a scattered handful of diamonds, firing their useless, gorgeous beams of light in a defiant final act. And the Vorax swarm, sensing the culmination of the feast, converged. It was a slow, cosmic tide of chitin and hunger, drawn to the bright, fragile lights. Just as the human, June, had predicted. 100,000 kilometers away, hidden in the massive sensor shadow of the gas giant's third moon, the unyielding spirit was a silent black stone. Inside, the four humans were not preparing for a battle. They were preparing for a dive. Atmosphere is a nasty soup, Una said, reading the direct scans of the target. Ammonia, methane, traces of hydrogen sulfide. Pressure is about 5 times Earth sea level. Temperature at the hull penetration point is 200 degrees Celsius. Choi Min-soo grunted, a sound of approval. He was checking the seals on his heavy armor. Good for the joints. Loosens you up. Park Soo-min piloted them on a slow, creeping trajectory. They were not flying towards the Vorax mothership. They were letting its own orbital pull draw them in, like a piece of space dust. The mothership was not a ship at all, in the consensus understanding. It was an asteroid that had been consumed and transformed. A fleshy, pulsating planetoid, veined with bioluminescent rot and armored in layers of hardened resin. It had no clear engines, no weapons ports. It simply was. And it was growing. The synapse node is here, Una said, highlighting a deep, hot chamber near the core. The neural activity is off the charts. It's not just a queen. It's the entire swarm's mind. If it goes quiet, the swarm becomes a body with no head. June studied the path. Direct route is through the thickest concentration of life signs. We go in through the secondary digestive vent here. He pointed to a fissure on the scan that was billowing periodic gusts of volatile gas. It's a purge channel. They blow waste and heat out of it, It will be clear. Until it purges again, Suman said, her hands steady on the controls. We'll be inside by then, June replied. Minsu, the charges. Yuna, the biophage. We stick to the plan. We are not here to fight the whole ship. We are here to deliver a message. One package from Earth. Their insertion pod was not elegant. It was a dense, conical plug of reinforced ceramic and depleted uranium. It had one job: survive atmospheric entry and punch through the organic hull. There were no seats, just crash webbing. The ride was not smooth. It was a violent, shuddering fall. Alarms blared as the outer skin burned away, but the core held. They hit the living hull with a sound like a tooth cracking, and a bone-deep thud that shook their teeth. The pod's forward jaws blew open. The environment that greeted them was worse than the scan suggested. The heat was a physical weight. The air was thick, yellow, and stank of rotting eggs and spoiled meat. The gravity was a sluggish, heavy pull. The walls were not metal. They were wet, ribbed flesh, pulsing slowly. Bioluminescent slime dripped from above, casting a sickly green light. Immediately, the ship knew it had a parasite. The flesh around the pod opening began to convulse, trying to seal the wound. Tendrils, sharp and whip-like, lashed out from the walls. Minsu was the first out. A tendril shot towards his face. He didn't flinch. His armored hand snapped up and caught it. There was a crunch. He ripped it from the wall and tossed the still twitching thing aside. Nervous, he commented. They moved. June took point, his eyes scanning not for doors, but for passages, for pulses in the flesh that indicated major vascular or neural bundles. They were not following a map. They were following the flow of life. Yuna followed, a handheld scanner in one hand, a canister of the biophage slung on her back. Suman guarded the rear, her own scanner tuned to the subtle vibrations in the floor, alert for the movement of internal defenders. They came quickly. Not soldiers, but antibodies. Six-limbed creatures of chitin and exposed muscle, dripping with the same acidic slime. They skittered along the walls and ceiling, moving with a terrifying, insectile speed. They did not scream. They clicked. The humans did not form a neat line. They reacted. June's first shot was with a compact launcher. It fired not an explosive, but a dense net of monofilament wire weighted with heavy pellets. It wrapped around two of the creatures, and as they struggled, the wires sliced deep into their carapaces, pinning them to the fleshy wall, where they bled out yellow ichor. Minsu preferred a more direct approach. A creature leaped at him. He sidestepped, and as it passed, he brought his armored fist down on its central spine. The crack echoed in the wet corridor. Yuna and Suman focused on the environment. A spray of acid shot from a vent. Suman had already identified the pressure buildup and shoved Yuna aside. The acid hit the floor where she had been standing, sizzling and eating deep into the organic material. Yuna responded by firing a pressurized canister of neutralizing agent into the vent. The sizzling stopped with a choked gurgle. They were not invincible. The heat was sapping their energy reserves faster than expected. The constant psychic background hum of the hive mind was a pressure on their thoughts, a whispering, hungry static. June felt a headache building behind his eyes. Yuna's hands were steady, but she was sweating more than the heat alone could explain. They reached a vast chamber, a central artery. Below them, a river of pulpy, half-digested biomass flowed. The way across was a series of unstable-looking organic bridges, and the chamber was alive with defenders. Dozens of them. Clicking, skittering, waiting. No time for subtle, June said, his voice tight. Suman, the vent. Suman nodded. She pulled a small device from her pack and jammed it into a soft, throbbing node on the wall. It was a sonic emitter, tuned to a frequency that disrupted the delicate internal balance of the Vorax creatures. She activated it. The effect was immediate and chaotic. The clicking turned to shrieks of disoriented pain. The creatures stumbled, their coordination shattered. Some fell into the Destiv River below. Others lashed out blindly. Go now. June ordered. They ran across the trembling bridges. Min-Su fired a short, controlled burst from his heavy rifle, a kinetic weapon that fired solid slugs. Each impact was a wet, explosive crack against the disoriented creatures. They were not elegant kills. They were brutal, efficient removals. On the other side, the way to the core was a steep, spiraling tunnel that throbbed with a deep, rhythmic pulse. Thump, 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 thump. It was the heartbeat of the swarm. The final door was not a door. It was a sphincter of thick, knotted muscle, sealed tight. It was also the most heavily defended point they had seen. Larger creatures, like armored guardians, stood before it. June looked at his team. They were streaked with alien fluids, their armor steaming in the hot, foul air. Their breath was coming hard. The psychic pressure here was immense, a wall of alien thought pushing against their minds. It whispered of hunger, of endless consumption, of the futility of resistance. He met Yuna's eyes. She gave a sharp, determined nod. Min-Su slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle. Sumin readied a pulse grenade. Consensus strategy would fail here, June said, his voice cutting through the static in their heads. They would try to reason with the door. We are not consensus. We are from Earth. He raised his launcher. We knock. The final door was a wall of living muscle, deep red and glistening under the eerie green light. The guardians before it were unlike the skittering defenders. They were massive, low to the ground, with carapaces like slabs of black rock and multiple sets of dripping, serrated mandibles. They did not click. They growled, a sound that vibrated through the spongy floor and into the human's bones. Li Jun did not give an order. He simply acted. His raised launcher fired not an explosive, but a high-velocity penetrator. It struck the lead guardian square in its central sensory cluster with a sound like a hammer hitting wet clay. The creature reared back, blinded and enraged, thrashing into its companion. Now! June's voice was a crack of command. Park Suman's pulse grenade flew in a low arc, bouncing once before coming to rest between the two confused beasts. It detonated with a flash of blue-white light and a concussive thump that was more felt than heard. The grenade didn't shred flesh. It overloaded neural pathways. Both guardians stiffened, their limbs locking, paralyzed by the electromagnetic surge. Choi Min-Su was already moving. He charged forward, not at the creatures, but at the sealed sphincter door itself. As he ran, he unclipped a shaped charge from his belt, slapping it against the knotted muscle where he judged it would be weakest. He set the timer and kept running, past the twitching guardians, taking up a covering position on the other side of the chamber. The whole process took 7 seconds. The charge detonated. It was not a fiery explosion, but a focused, directional blast. It cut through the organic material with a scream of tearing tissue. A gaping, smoldering hole was punched into the heart of the swarm. A wave of hot, thick air, smelling of ozone and something profoundly alien-like burnt neurons, washed over them. Chun went through first, his weapon up. Kim Yuna was right behind him, her scanner whirring, her eyes wide not with fear, but with intense, clinical focus. The chamber beyond was the synapse node. It was vast. The walls, ceiling, and floor were a single interconnected mass of pulsating pink and gray neural tissue. In the center, suspended by thick cords of nerve fiber, was the node's core, a colossal, throbbing brain-like mass, covered in a million flickering lights of synaptic fire. The hum was no longer a background noise. It was a physical force here, a pressure in their ears and teeth and minds. It was hunger. It was the desire to consume every leaf, every breath, every living spark in the galaxy, translated into a raw psychic scream. June felt it push against his thoughts. Images flashed, Earth barren and silent. The consensus species dissolving into biomass. A cold, empty universe. It was trying to show them the futility, the inevitability. It was the logic of the void. It's beautiful, Una whispered, her exobiologist's mind fighting the psychic assault. A neural network of this scale. Completely singular consciousness. A deep, resonant thrum pulsed through the chamber. From the fleshy walls, new defenders began to emerge. Not creatures this time. These were like walking tumors, blobs of protoplasmic flesh studded with sharp bone spurs. They were the node's final, direct immune response. They oozed forward, blocking the path to the central brain. Minsu, Suman, hold the door. June yelled, his voice strained against the mental pressure. Una, you have to deliver the package. I'll clear you a path. Minsu and Suman turned, firing back into the entrance tunnel where the first skittering sounds of reinforcements could be heard. Their world narrowed to the choke point, to controlled bursts of fire and the slap of acidic spit against their armor. June faced the protoplasmic blobs. Energy weapons were useless. Kinetic weapons would just punch holes that would seal. He switched tactics. From a pouch on his thigh, he pulled a canister labeled with a simple flame symbol. Incendiary gel. A primitive, horrific tool. He fired a glob of the sticky substance at the lead blob. It stuck and sizzled. He shot it with a tracer round from his sidearm. The blob ignited with a whoosh. It didn't scream. It popped and crackled, the fats in its flesh fueling the fire. It flailed, spreading the gel to two others. Soon, a wall of greasy, alien flame roared between June and the rest of the blobs, filling the chamber with black, acrid smoke. It was a brutal, ugly solution. It worked. Go. He coughed, his eyes streaming from the smoke. Una didn't hesitate. She ducked under his arm and sprinted through the heat of the burning blobs, her canister of biophage held tight. The central brain mass loomed before her. The synaptic lights flickered faster, as if sensing the specific, targeted threat she represented. The psychic assault narrowed, focusing on her. She felt a wave of crushing despair, a certainty that her life was a meaningless flicker. Her steps faltered. On the other side of the fire, June saw her stumble. He couldn't hear her thoughts, but he saw her head droop. He raised his weapon, but there was no target to shoot. This was her fight. Una! He roared, his voice raw. It's just a thing. A big, ugly thing from a gentle world. It doesn't know what a Deathworlder is. Show it. His words, in basic English, simple and blunt, cut through the psychic fog. They were not poetry. They were a fact. She was Kim Una. She was from Earth. This overgrown nerve cluster was just another problem to solve. Her head snapped up. The despair vanished, burned away by a familiar, cold anger. This thing thought hunger was a weapon? It had never been truly hungry. It had never had to fight for a single breath. She reached the base of the neural cords. The biophage canister had a long needle-like injector. She drove it deep into the soft, quivering tissue of the synapse node. She emptied the entire canister. The biophage was a cocktail of Earth's nastiest, most predatory nanoscale organisms, designed to seek and dismantle the unique protein chains of Vorex neural tissue. It would work like a prion disease, turning the node's own structure against itself. The effect was not instant, but it was visible. The flickering synaptic lights began to stutter. A tremor ran through the entire chamber. The deep thrumming pulse became erratic, like a fibrillating heart. The psychic pressure wavered, then shattered into jagged, painful fragments. But it wasn't enough. The node was huge. The biophage would take time to spread. Time they didn't have. Reinforcements were overwhelming. Minsu and Suman at the door. Chum was at her side. "It's not dead. It's dying," Yuna said, checking her scanner. But too slowly. June looked up at the throbbing mass, at the thick neural cords that fed it and held it aloft. He saw structure. He saw load-bearing points. He pointed. There and there. The support anchors. We blow those. The whole thing collapses. Its own weight will crush the rest. He called to Minsu. The shaped charges, now. Minsu, while laying down suppressing fire with one hand, pulled the remaining 2 shaped charges from his belt and hurled them across the chamber like metal bricks. June caught them. He scrambled up the shuddering neural cords, climbing the terrible living architecture. He placed the first charge at the base of a major cord, where it anchored into the wall of brain matter. He placed the second on the opposite side. He slid back down, grabbing Yuna's arm. Time to go. Minsu, Suman, disengage. Fall back to the pod. They ran. The chamber was coming apart. The node, poisoned and destabilized, was convulsing. Pieces of neural tissue sloughed off the walls like melting fat. Behind them, with 2 sharp, concussive cracks, the shaped charges detonated. The great neural cords snapped. A massive central brain mass, robbed of its support, plummeted. It hit the floor of the chamber with a wet, world-ending crunch. The psychic scream cut off abruptly, replaced by a silent, expanding wave of neural shock that rippled outwards through the entire Vorax swarm. The silence was the first thing they noticed. The constant, grinding hum of the hive mind was gone, leaving only the sounds of their own breathing, the distant trip of fluids, and the groaning of dying architecture. The Vorax mothership was not exploding. It was unraveling. Li Jun led the way back through the fleshy corridors. The change was immediate and profound. The defensive creatures they encountered were not attacking. They were stumbling, moving in confused circles, or simply lying still, twitching. Some were attacking each other in mindless frenzy. The biophage was spreading through the neural network, and the collapse of the synapse node had sent a shockwave of systemic failure through the entire bioship. It was like watching a brain-dead body spasm. Their retreat was faster than their advance. There was no coordinated resistance to slow them down. They reached their insertion pod to find the opening they had punched was already half-sealed with a rapidly hardening, crusty scab of organic material. Minsu made quick work of it with a focused plasma torch. The smell of burnt chitin sharp in the stagnant air. Inside the pod, as Suman initiated the emergency launch sequence, they felt the mothership itself begin to break apart. Great tremors shook its structure. The pod blasted free, leaving a new, ugly wound in the dying creature, and shot back into the cold clarity of space. That the view from the unyielding spirit as it regained safe distance was stark. The Vorax planetoid was no longer a coherent whole. It had split into several large, lifeless chunks, trailing clouds of frozen biomass. The swarm around the gas giant was in chaos. Without the node's guiding will, the individual ships had stopped their relentless assault. Some drifted aimlessly. Others collided with each other. A few seemed to be trying to feed on the remnants of their own mothership. The consensus fleet, hovering at the edge of the conflict, was utterly still, like a group of stunned birds. A hail came through. Fleetlight's face appeared on the viewer. His crystalline facets were dull with shock, but a new soft light pulsed within them. Human vessel. We are registering total cessation of coordinated Vorax activity. The swarm is inert? What? What did you do? We gave it a headache it couldn't survive, Choi Min-soo said from behind June. Wiping alien residue off his armor with a cloth, June stepped forward. The synapse node is destroyed. The hive mind is gone. What remains is just biological debris. It is no longer a threat. Fleetlight was silent for a long moment, processing the simplicity of the statement against the scale of the miracle. You went inside. You walked into the heart of that, and you killed its mind. It was the mission, Una said, her voice tired but even. The environment was within our operational parameters. The alien commander trembled. Within parameters. The words would haunt him. He had seen the sensor data from the dying mothership, the temperatures, the toxins, the atmospheric pressure. To these beings, it was simply within parameters. You have saved the consensus, Fleetlight finally said, his voice thick with an emotion for which his species had no clear word. A mixture of gratitude, awe, and deep, unnerving fear. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You must come to our homeworld. There will be celebrations, honors. Your species will be welcomed as saviors into the galactic consensus. We will share our technology, our knowledge, everything we have. The offer hung in the air of the human ship. Park Soo-min looked up from her console. Kim Yuna glanced at June. Min-soo stopped cleaning his armor. June's expression did not change. He had anticipated this. We appreciate your offer, Fleetlight. But we must decline. The alien commander's light flickered in confusion. Decline? I do not understand. You have earned a place among the stars. We already have a place, June replied, his tone respectful but final. We are from Earth, a death world. Our place is there. We did not come for an alliance, or for technology, or for honor. Then why? Fleetlight asked, truly bewildered. Una answered this time. Because you asked for help. And because the Vorax were not just your problem. A swarm that consumes all life is a threat to everything, even to a death world, eventually. We removed the threat. That is all. June continued. Our purpose is not to join your garden. Our purpose is to make sure the garden exists. The Aegis Project exists to guard against existential threats, to be the shield that the gentle do not even know they have. If we join you, we bring our nature into your peace. Our history is written in conflict. We would change you, and you would change us. Both would be for the worse. He let that sink in. So here is what will happen. We will leave. You will tell your people that the Vorax were defeated by a system failure, a lucky break. You will not speak of us. You will delete the specific coordinates of Earth from your main archives. You will continue to build your peaceful, beautiful civilization. Fleetlight was stunned. You wish to remain hidden? After this? We need to remain hidden, June corrected. For your safety and for ours. But know this. If a threat like this ever rises again, if you face something you cannot reason with or outrun, send the signal. The same distress call. We will be listening. And we will come. It was a promise. It was a warning. The humans were not offering friendship. They were offering a grim, silent guardianship. They were the wolves in the forest, ensuring the lambs could graze, but asking never to be invited into the pasture. Fleetlight saw the unshakable resolve in the human's eyes. He saw the quiet agreement in the others. He understood. These were not creatures of community. They were creatures of duty, forged in isolation and endless struggle. To honor them was to respect their choice. We will do as you ask, Fleetlight said, bowing his head, a gesture of profound respect he had never offered any being before. The file on your world will be sealed, classified, given a new designation. He paused, thinking of the human's simple, powerful words. to make sure the garden exists. It will read, Protector Class Deathworld. Do not disturb. June gave a single slight nod. Goodbye, Fleetlight. Tend your garden. The transmission ended. On the bridge of the unyielding spirit, the four humans sat in a comfortable, familiar silence. The job was done. Suman plotted the course for home. Min-Su went to clean his gear properly. Yuna began composing her mission report. Her words clinical and dried out. June stood by the viewport, watching the glittering, fragile ships of the consensus begin their slow, careful recovery. He felt no pride, only a deep, quiet satisfaction. They had not conquered. They had not been heroes. They had done a necessary, ugly job with the tools they're terrible. Wonderful World had given them dot as the ship turned and the warp drive began to hum. Preparing for the long slip back into the dark, he thought of Earth, of its raging storms, its deep oceans, its silent forests and noisy cities. A violent, vibrant, alive world, not a gentle garden, a fortress. And they were its keepers. The unyielding spirit vanished into the void, leading behind a saved galaxy that would never know their names, and a simple, terrifying entry in a hidden database. The aliens hadn't known who would answer their call. Now they did, and they would sleep better and more fearfully, for knowing that the most dangerous Deathworlders were out there, watching from the shadows they called home.